So a matchup that has potential of being an absolutely incredible one taking place this weekend, France versus South Africa. The last time these two sides played, there was 1 point separating them. That was in the World Cup quarterfinal. And now they go head-to-head again before that World Cup draw in December. There seems to be a little bit of bad blood between these two sides, but one thing is for sure, they are two outstanding teams, and it is certainly going to be a must-see fixture of international rugby. And in this preview, we'll be looking through at the lineups that have been announced, their key players in the sides, and then also a prediction at the end for who I think will win this contest. But jumping straight into it, looking through at the lineups, we will start with the away side, South Africa. They have got a few changes compared to what we saw in the match up against the Japanese, but still some very strong talent missing from this lineup. But that does not mean that it is not still a world-class side, with a little bit of a experimentation yet again from Rassie when it comes to his bench. But in the front row, this is where we do see Bohan Venter as the number one, Malcolm Marx at 2, and Thomas du Toit slotting in at 3. So actually two changes in the propping department compared to what we saw in the game up against the Japanese. There is no Zachary Portham for this game. Oxenschat out injured. So it did mean that there were going to be some changes here anyway. And that is where we do see Bohan Venter featuring for the first time in a little while. In the locking duo, Eben Etzebeth back into the Springboks side. He slots in as the number 4. Extremely experienced in that locking duo. Alongside also Ludiacha, who has a fair amount of experience himself. This is a dangerous duo, but they have to be, because they're going head there with Flamand and Meafou. The line-out time is going to be extremely competitive between these two sides. Going to be a very entertaining battle. In the loose forward trio, we do see a milestone here for the Springboks. Siya Kolisi brings up his 100th test cap, and this is a big game to bring up this milestone in. There are bragging rights on the line for these two sides. Like I said, there's been a little bit of back and forth between the fan bases throughout the week. So Siya Kolisi, as the captain of South Africa, he would love nothing more than to silence the critics for this matchup. Number 7, Pieter-Steph du Toit, and number 8, Jasper Wiese. So extreme physicality in that loose forward trio for the South Africans. Wiese's ball running is always dangerous. Pieter-Steph du Toit, he is dangerous in general all around the park. So overall, I think this was the best loose forward trio we could have seen from South Africa heading into this match. Moving on to the 9 and 10 combination. This is where we see Kobus Reinach and Sasha Feinberg Ngume Zulu again get that start as that 9-10 combo. We did see it up against the Japanese. It worked well. Reinach's had a couple handling errors here and there, but still looking at the entire picture has been an extremely handy option alongside Sasha, who has been insane throughout the last few games of his international career. Got himself the double up against Japan, and him versus Intermac in this game is going to be absolutely awesome. In the midfield combination, Damien de Lendi alongside Jesse Kriel, so the experienced option here for Rassie rather than someone like a Kane Moody. And then the back three, Kurt Liarense back into the starting side again after his injury return up against the Japanese. Cheslin Colby shifts from 15 back to the right wing, and Damian Valimza returns from his hamstring injury. He will be there as the number 15. But off the bench, it is a 5-3-6-2 hybrid split here for Rassie. That is because of Andre Esterhuizen playing 21. He can come off the bench as a forward. He could come off the bench as someone in that centre pairing if needed. So some great versatility there. And speaking of versatile, no Kwaka Smith for this game. Instead, Ruan Nokia plays 20. That is due to a bit of an injury we saw from Kwaka Smith throughout the week in training. But moving on to this French starting lineup, looking through at the front row first. It is going to be Adosio as that number 1, Julian Marchand slotting in at 2, and then Montagna as that number 3. Now, I will mention I absolutely butchered the two props names throughout the July internationals when they did get to feature up against New Zealand. This was actually the duo that we saw in the third match, but I don't think I've got much better with those pronunciations. Unfortunately, there's just something about the French name that doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but I'm hoping throughout the commentary we can at least get somewhere near the right pronunciations for these players. Flamand and Meafou, like I mentioned, they will be the locking duo in this contest. Now, the loose forward trio, this is where there are a few questions regarding France and their selections. We do not see Gregory Aldrit feature at all in this contest. He isn't off the bench instead of starting. They have gone completely different, going with Anthony Gelange as the 6. Bodian slots in at 7, and then The youngster Mikel Gilliard, who had a great series up against New Zealand, also played well in the Six Nations, so they've decided to give him the chance at number 8, but it just seems weird not to have Gregory Aldrit in a game like this. So whether or not there is some sort of little injury, which I don't think there is, but I can't think of too many other reasons you would leave a player like that out, unless you're trying to find that next young option and give them some experience up against the Springboks here, but it does confuse me a little bit in that selection department. Not saying that Gilliard won't have a great game, because like I said, he's in phenomenal form, but even Aldrit off the bench could have been a great option here for the French. Nolan Le Garrec will be the starting 9, with Romain Ntamack slotting in at 10. Dangerous on both sides for France as well as South Africa. In that 19 combination, Gaël Fickou, he will be captain at 12, with Barassi slotting in as the 13. Gaël Fickou actually getting to captain up against New Zealand in the July internationals. In the back three, it is Louis Biarray out on one wing, Damien Penaud out on the other, and then Thomas Ramos back in that 15 jersey. He was absent throughout that July international tour, but Penaud as well as Biarray, that is such a dangerous duo. You throw that in with the rest of the French backline and they do look absolutely world class, which is why when you look through at these lineups, it is very understandable why people are so excited about this matchup. Looking through at the bench, they have got Taufa Fanua in that number 19 jersey. Also, Maxime Luku. I feel like he is the type of player that later on in the contest, him versus Grant Williams, is a head-to-head that late in the contest could actually determine the winner of this matchup, but everyone has to be on their A game, which is a perfect way of transitioning into the key head-to-heads. Looking through, first of all, I'm going with the 10 jerseys. I normally do it. That is one of the best positions to look at as the head-to-head and the important role that both of these guys need to have in their side success. Romain Ntamack versus Sasha Feinberg Mngumezulu. Now, like I said, Sasha's been in great form, scoring tries for fun at international level. Ntamack is more of that controlled 10 option, but every once in a while he will throw something crazy out there, see whether or not it works. Le Garrec normally getting that ball out very quickly and efficiently, which gives Ntamack that little bit more time to be able to make his decisions. But both of these men, they are literally the difference between their backline functioning and scoring multiple tries, or it just being a little bit flat for either of these teams. The next head-to-head, I'm looking at Damien Penaud and Kurt Liarense, but I do feel like it has to be a combo deal, and you have Cheslin Kolbe against Biarray as well. So we're going with the two wingers for both of these sides as key players. And at this matchup, Kolbe, he is one of those guys that no matter where you stick him out there on the field, even with a couple little errors throughout this year, which he has been reminded about multiple times, he is still one of the most dangerous players out there on the park. We have to remember what he did last time. The Springboks went head-to-head with France, charging down that crucial conversion, which in the end was the difference, just the 1 point separating them the last time that they played. Biarray, he has been insane and is one of the most talented youngsters, I feel, in the whole world of rugby at the moment. Damien Penaud, he's been there, done that. He's had success under his belt, and he is still so dangerous up against Kurt Liarense. There are just so many great players across both of these lineups. You can probably tell how excited I am for this match, but it is just absolutely awesome to see these two sides play off, and hopefully it does deliver like the last time they went head-to-head. But we are up to that stage of a prediction. Now, I will mention something that I haven't seen talked about too much throughout this week, which I feel like it should be a little bit, and straight away it's going to sound like an excuse, but I also do think it is completely justifiable. One of these two sides played last week. The other hasn't played since July. So I honestly do think that will actually play quite a big factor in the result of this matchup. If this game, for instance, was taking place when both sides had just played, you'd say extremely close, going down to the wire, maybe separated by less than 5. But because the Springboks have played a game for their November internationals, going head-to-head up against the Japanese, who I know that some people would say because they're a slightly lower ranking, it didn't quite challenge the Springboks in the way they would have liked, but having minutes under the belt is so crucial in international rugby. We have seen it time and time again. Sides struggle in their first match when they're trying to find that rhythm, and then the week after, that is normally when they start to find their best form as a side. So for that very reason, Even though this game has taken place at the Stade de France, which you would think would give a massive advantage to the French here, I'm saying minutes under their belt, because they haven't got any, I'm going the Springboks to win this game by a little bit more than maybe some would be anticipating for this contest. So I'm going South Africa to win this game 28-18. So 10 points separating these two sides. Like I said, minutes under the belt are so crucial. South Africa have had 80 minutes to try and work out what works that little bit better. Also, to just continuing to get minutes like they had throughout the Rugby Championship, which of course they were the victors of in the end, going head-to-head up against the Six Nations champions in France, who for some of these experienced heads didn't actually play in July, but they have been playing in the top 14, of course, which can be very handy for preparing players for international rugby. But I'm going to say the Boks just that little bit too strong, get themselves the victory here. But this game, it is kicking off at 10:10 p.m. on Saturday night, or it is a nice early 9:10 a.m. kickoff for us here in New Zealand on Sunday. We will be covering the match on the channel, so of course, be sure to check that out. Also, let me know your score predictions in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you haven't already, and be sure to subscribe, and I will see you all for the next one. My eyeball is see-through. How does that work? That is terrifying. I'm demon. Brr.